Reteach your body how to create, and everything that once felt distant will find a way through you. There is a subtle craniosacral micro-ritual that brings the creative rhythm back to your nervous system, and the effects show up within minutes, with physical signs you can feel and measure. The secret lies in an internal tide, a real pulse that flows through the cerebrospinal fluid between the skull and the sacrum, organizing presence, voice, and intention. When this axis disconnects, you keep functioning, but without expanding. You breathe shallowly, speak without resonance, and desire without drive. This state is not laziness, it is elegant survival, a nervous system that has chosen efficiency over creation. The creative impulse hasn't vanished, it just became inaccessible, locked in a pulse that lost its amplitude. But there is a way to reinstall this axis, and it's verifiable. An involuntary sigh arises, warmth moves down through the abdomen, saliva returns to the mouth, shoulders release without effort. Leaving this video now is like closing the door on the key that reconnects trauma and creation, and you will remain exactly where you are, functioning without ever truly creating. What this axis does for the entire system, and how it can be retrained through light touch and guided breath, is about to be revealed. This corridor between the skull and the sacrum is not an abstract concept. It is a physical pathway where intention turns into movement, where the voice finds resonance, where desire gains traction. In the alchemical workshops of the Middle Ages, the spine was called the ladder of light, a channel where celestial and earthly forces met. What once sounded mystical was actually a refined reading of something that osteopathic clinics today can measure with precision, a rhythmic, slow pulse that moves through the cerebrospinal fluid, organizing all neural communication between these two poles. When that dialogue is disrupted by physical, emotional, or inherited trauma, the creative energy does not disappear. It simply gets locked behind a tension the nervous system interprets as a constant low-level alert. By the end of this video, you'll have a simple, repeatable protocol in your hands, one that re-establishes this dialogue with signals that your own system will confirm. This is not about belief, it's about verification. Your breath drops into the abdomen for the first time in weeks. The sigh comes without you trying, the mouth begins to salivate again, and your shoulders release without conscious effort. These somatic markers are not random. They are physiological responses orchestrated by the ventral branch of the vagus nerve, the only one capable of activating regeneration, social connection, and creativity. What you will learn here transforms vague anxiety into a steady creative impulse, because the body once again recognizes safety, and safety is the foundation where creation takes place. In Egyptian Hermeticism, the skull was considered the inner sky and the sacrum, sacred ground, not poetic language, but a map of a physical dialogue that anatomy hadn't yet named. The principle of correspondence taught that what is above responds to what is below, and this vertical axis was living proof of that. Two poles in constant conversation, sustaining rhythm, flow, and presence. The principle of rhythm described the tide that creates and withdraws, rises and falls, expands and integrates, exactly what the cerebrospinal fluid does in slow cycles, bathing the brain and the spinal cord, adjusting pressure and neural conduction. The principle of vibration pointed to the fact that everything moves in distinct frequencies, and the fascia, the connective tissue that surrounds every muscle, every organ, every nerve, responds to that. When it is rigid, it blocks movement. When it is available, it allows passage. The polyvagal theory by Stephen Porges explains the mechanism behind this response. Signals of safety begin in the brainstem, travel down the spinal cord and reach the abdomen through the vagus nerve, the main parasympathetic agent. When the skull is tense and the sacrum is immobile, the vagus nerve does not get a green light. The system interprets this stillness as a low, ongoing threat and keeps the body in defensive conservation mode. Epigenetics adds another layer. Inherited stress response patterns shape autonomic reactivity even before birth. But these patterns are plastic. They respond to repeated cues of safety. When the craniosacral tide begins to stretch, the fascia softens through both mechanical and biochemical conduction, and what was inherited rigidity becomes regained mobility. Science and hermetic wisdom do not contradict. They converge. Both read the body as measurable language, where intention meets structure and structure responds to presence. The path back to your axis begins with posture. Lie down or sit with firm support under your head. A folded pillow, a solid cushion, any surface that holds the skull without letting it sink. Place both hands like a cradle beneath the occipital bone, the base of the skull, just above the neck. Do not press, just hold the weight. The touch is firm but gentle, as if holding something precious that cannot fall or be crushed. This occipital hold creates the first cue of safety. The skull is supported, and the system can release the cervical vigilance it has held for months, maybe even years. Now, bring your attention to the solar plexus, the area between the sternum and the navel, where emotional and respiratory tension meet. This is where fear becomes a knot, anxiety becomes a tightness, breath gets stuck, and desire loses strength. Do not force anything, simply observe. Inhale slowly to a mental count of 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and exhale to a count of 6 or 8, always through the nose, without rushing. The extended exhale is an autonomic anchor. It slows down the system without direct command, signaling to the brainstem that there is no immediate threat. The body only releases tension when it feels safe, and safety is not a thought, it is a somatic reading. The nervous system scans for breathing rhythm, quality of touch, and sustained presence. When these three elements converge, slow breathing, steady touch, and focused attention, the vagus nerve begins to shift gears. The first somatic marker to watch for is the involuntary sigh. It does not happen because you want it. It happens because the diaphragm has let go. When the sigh arrives, intrathoracic pressure drops, the heart rate slows, and the brain gets the message. There is no danger. This is the vagal reset, the first sign that the tide is beginning to move. Maintain the occipital hold and the guided breath for a few more cycles. Do not track results, simply observe. If the sigh comes, allow it. If the jaw softens, allow it. If the shoulders release without you telling them to, allow it. The body is remembering a language it had forgotten, the language of embodied safety. And now that the skull has started to let go, the next step is to restore the dialogue with the sacrum, bringing the conversation back to the axis that organizes presence, voice, and intention. Now, let one of your hands move down to the sacrum. If you are lying down, slide your hand beneath the lower back until you reach the triangular bone at the base of the spine. Firm, broad, unmistakable. If you are sitting, place your hand behind your back and rest your open palm on it. The touch should be minimal, no pressing, no massaging, no pushing. The intention here is to create space, not interference. The palm simply rests. The weight of the hand is enough. This contact reconnects the dialogue between the inner sky and sacred ground, between the skull and the sacrum, restoring to the axis the conversation that organizes everything: neural rhythm, fluid flow, and muscle tone. The craniosacral tide has its own rhythm, much slower than pulmonary breathing, about 6 to 12 cycles per minute, and almost imperceptible. When the system relaxes, this primordial rhythm begins to surface. You don't have to do anything for it to happen. Just keep one hand holding the occiput and the other in contact with the sacrum, while the guided breathing continues. The cerebrospinal fluid, which was circulating in a fragmented way, begins to flow with greater amplitude. Neural information moves more freely. The solar plexus, once contracted, now receives the descent of breath again. The somatic markers begin to build. Salivation returns, not because you thought about it, but because the salivary glands reactivate when the parasympathetic system takes back control. Under chronic stress, the mouth dries out. Under safety, it returns to moisture. A gentle warmth moves down through the abdomen, a sign that blood flow has returned to the visceral organs. The stomach, intestines, liver, these only receive full nourishment when the system recognizes that there is no threat. The lips soften, the eyes feel heavier, the eyelids give in without your will. The shoulders held up for hours, maybe days, finally release. These signs are not random or subjective, they are physiological responses orchestrated by the ventral branch of the vagus nerve, the only one capable of activating regeneration, social connection, and creativity. When it takes the lead, the body exits fight or collapse mode and enters creation mode. The voice settles. Intention gains traction. Desire returns with full impulse. And now that the axis has been restored, and the markers confirm the autonomic shift, the final step is to seal this coherence with sound, a seed phrase that anchors intention, voice, and tone within the same vibratory field. Choose a short phrase, something like, "I am open to flow," or "My body knows how to create," and whisper it on the exhale very softly, almost inaudibly. The voice doesn't need to be strong, it needs to be felt. When you speak, your vocal cords vibrate, but the vibration doesn't stop there. It moves down through the sternum, passes the diaphragm, and reaches the sacrum. This sound wave reinforces the neural pattern just established, anchoring coherence between intention, voice, and tone. The body learns through embodied repetition, and the seed phrase is the vibratory seal that tells the system, "This is real, this remains." Repeat this ritual 2 or 3 times a day when you wake up, before sleep, or any time you feel tension rising. Each round consolidates the memory of a long tide. Neuroplasticity depends on repetition within a context of safety. When the body experiences the same sequence over and over without threat, it updates its default response. What was once a constant low-level alert becomes readiness to create. Mental noise fades, the voice settles, intention stops pushing and starts flowing. This is not magic, it is biology responding to a coherent internal environment. To follow the process, use the practical scale. Before the ritual, assess your level of tension from 0 to 10, 0 being complete relaxation, 10 being total lockup. Note it mentally. After the ritual, reassess. The difference is objective. Observe your breathing range. Place your hand on your abdomen and notice whether your breath reaches down or gets stuck in the chest. Check for somatic signs: sigh, salivation, warmth, relaxed shoulders. These markers confirm that the autonomic shift has occurred, that the vagus nerve has taken over, that the sky-to-earth axis is once again in conversation. The corridor between trauma and creation opens when the body remembers its original rhythm. Intention is no longer an effort, it becomes natural movement. Desire gains traction again because the system recognizes that there is a way through. Creativity returns as a steady flow, not as an anxious burst followed by collapse. You don't force the tide, you train your body to recognize it. And when the body remembers everything that once felt far away, a voice that resonates, a presence that takes up space, creation that unfolds without struggle, returns to its place within you. Because the axis is once again supporting what was always there, waiting to be activated. Natalie was 50 years old when she realized that something essential was turned off. Stable job, grown children, a calm marriage, but whenever she sat down to create something of her own, her body would freeze. Her breathing became shallow, her voice came out without conviction, and ideas would die before taking shape. She couldn't understand where the block came from, but she could feel tensions that didn't start with her. A vague fear, nameless shame, a tightness in her solar plexus that felt inherited from stories that came before her. Creativity was knocking, but her body was still reacting to old threats. Natalie wasn't in collapse, but she was far from creation, functioning without flourishing. When she learned the occipital hold and the sacral touch, the change didn't come as an insight, it came as a sigh. On the third day of practice, lying on the living room floor before bed, her body released an involuntary sigh so deep that she stopped everything. Warmth moved down through her abdomen, her shoulders dropped without her command, her jaw softened. It wasn't ordinary relaxation, it was release. Her body let go of something it had held for years, maybe generations, and for the first time in decades. Natalie felt internal space. Within 3 weeks, her voice began to settle. Words came with less rush, filling the space without force. Decisions that used to stall gained traction, not because they became easy, but because her body could once again support intention without fear. Creativity returned as a steady flow, not as an anxious burst followed by collapse. The craniosacral tide had reinstated the original rhythm, and Natalie crossed to the other side. Transformation only becomes real when the body recognizes it as real. Integration happens when physical markers confirm that the axis has returned. Breath that reaches the abdomen, warmth rising in the sternum, jaw softening effortlessly, a less guarded solar plexus. These signals don't lie. When they appear, the nervous system updates its default response. To anchor this state, use a repeatable signal gesture. Place your hand over your chest, take a long, slow exhale, and whisper a grounding word. Passage, axis, tide. 30 to 60 seconds is enough. When you feel tension rising, return to the reset point. A short phrase, "My body knows how to create." Slow breathing with a count of 4 on the inhale and 8 on the exhale, and your hand resting on the sternum. This simple gesture brings you back to your axis before the old pattern takes over. It's not about pushing through, it's about somatic sealing. Something small, measurable, that your body recognizes as a safe path back to the tide that creates. You've just learned that the body is not an obstacle, it is a territory of transformation. That between trauma and creation there is a physical, measurable axis that can be retrained through light touch, guided breath, and sustained presence. This axis is not a concept. It is a real pathway where intention becomes movement, where voice finds resonance, where desire gains traction. When the skull and sacrum start to communicate again, the cerebrospinal fluid regains its amplitude. The vagus nerve takes the lead once more, and the body shifts from survival mode into creation mode. There's no magic here, just physiology responding to a coherent internal environment. The philosopher Gaston Bachelard once wrote, "The house lives not only through daily function, but through the dream that inhabits it." The same is true for the body. It does not live only through function, but through the tide that flows through it. And when that tide returns, the body stops being just a shelter and becomes a living temple, a sacred space where divinity shows itself through sighs, warmth, salivation, and presence. God is not far away, waiting for you to be worthy. God is in the rhythm you re-educated, in the breath that reached your abdomen, in the axis that once again sustains your intention without fear. The divine reveals itself when the body remembers how to create, because to create is to participate in the same force that moves tides, cycles, and life. You don't need to force the tide. You need to train your body to recognize it. And when the sky-to-earth axis resumes its conversation, everything that once felt far away, a voice that resonates, a presence that takes up space, creation that unfolds without struggle, finds its way through you. Not because you changed your life, but because you changed your frequency. The corridor between trauma and creation opens when the body remembers its original rhythm. And in that moment, you realize creation was never about effort. It was always about passage. And the passage was already within you, just waiting for the axis to pulse again. If this content resonated with you, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. This expands the field of knowledge we're sharing and helps more people find their way back to the creative axis. I want to know how this ritual is moving your body. Write in the comments, I reteach my body how to create, and the passage between trauma and creation installs itself in me. This affirmation seals the somatic memory you've just anchored and marks your presence in this real space of transformation. Share this video with someone who needs to remember that the body knows how to create when the sky-to-earth axis comes back into conversation. And don't stop here. Click the screen and dive into another transformative video from the channel. Each practice deepens the corridor between intention and movement, between rhythm and presence. Remember, the body you re-educated today is not the same one that woke up yesterday. The craniosacral tide is pulsing again, and with it, your ability to create without struggle. You didn't have to force anything, only give back to your body the language it never truly forgot.